Welcome back guys. In this new video, we're going to dive into the Android Studio workspace, explain what all these files are, and break down some tabs and features. Let's get started. First, let's talk about the file hierarchy and explain what all these folders and files mean. We'll go through them one by one and give you a general idea of what each file does, based on its level of importance. Let's start with the activity main.xml file. In this file, you define the UI layout for your main activity. The elements in this file are called views. These include things like buttons, edit texts, text views, and more. You can set the size of these views, position them on the screen, define what text appears on buttons, and so much more. It's basically the front end of your app, kind of like what you'd work with if you've done web development before. In activity main.xml, you can either write code directly in the text tab or add views directly in the design tab. You can even open both tabs simultaneously, giving you a full view of both the code and the design elements. Next up, we have the main activity.kt file. This is where you define the logic for your main activity. This is where you make those views you defined in activity main.xml actually do something. For example, you'll write the code that tells each button what to do when clicked, what text shows up on a text view, and other app-specific logic. This file is essentially your backend, if you want to stick with the web development analogy. Moving on, we have the Android manifest.xml file. This file is super important because it provides the Android operating system with essential information about your application. In this file, you declare components of your app, like other activities, besides the main activity, for example. You also define permissions here, so if your app needs to access the camera, this is where you declare that. And of course, you can configure other app level settings, services, and more. Now let's talk about the build.gradle file for the application module. This file contains important configurations for your Android application, like targeting your SDK, defining the minimum SDK, and other relevant settings, such as additional packages and build types. We won't be using this file much, except when we want to add view binding or implement changes to our code base. Next, we have the colors.xml file. This one is pretty straightforward. In this file, you define the colors for your application. You can then use these colors to change the theme of your app or modify the color of buttons, text views, or any other element that you want to style. Moving on, we have the strings.xml file. In this XML file, you define all the string assets for your app, like the title of your app or the text displayed on buttons. This file is especially important when you're working on an application that supports multiple languages. For example, if your app supports both English and French, you can use strings.xml to define the text in both languages and easily switch between them. Under the strings and colors files, we have the themes.xml file. This file is crucial when you want to change the look and feel of your app. It's where you define your app's theme, like changing the background color, modifying the color of buttons, or adjusting other visual configurations that impact how your app looks. Now that we've covered the essential files, let's move on to some important tabs in Android Studio. First, we have the Device Manager tab. When you open it, you can see the emulator devices available for testing your app. If you remember from our last video, we set up an emulator to test our app. You can use this tab to manage and launch virtual devices. Next, we have the Gemini tab. Gemini is an AI assistant in Android Studio that helps you write code, offers suggestions, and gives you ways to improve your code. It's a really handy tool to speed up your development process and help you write cleaner, more efficient code. And that's a quick overview of the Android Studio workspace. These are the important files and tools you'll interact with most often while developing Android apps. We'll get into more advanced topics as we move forward, but for now, this should give you a solid foundation. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.